My name is Gina Walsh, and I was 28 years old the Christmas morning everything satisfying change. On Christmas morning, I gave my parents a small wrapped box. Mom laughed. "Let me guess," she said. "Another dollar store candle from the family disappointment." Dad didn't even look up from his phone. My sister chimed in. "Just open mine instead. It's actually worth something." So I took my box back. I opened it myself, right there, in front of everyone, and held up what was inside. My mother started crying. My father finally looked up. What they saw changed everything. Before I tell you what was in that box, please take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy this story. And drop where you're watching from and your local time in the comments. I'd love to know. Now let me take you back to where it all began. Growing up in our house outside Syracuse, New York, there were two kinds of daughters. There was Brielle, and then there was me. My father, Tom Walsh, was a plumber. Solid hands, quiet pride, the kind of man who measured his worth by whether the bills were paid on time. My mother, Diane, worked the front desk at a dental office. She liked things neat. She liked things she could point to and say, "See, we did all right." Brielle was the thing she pointed to most. My sister was 4 years older, a graduate of Boston University, married to a corporate lawyer named Derek Kessler. They lived in a nice suburb outside Boston. Brielle had the degree, the ring, the career title, the holiday photos that looked like catalog pages. She was everything my parents imagined when they imagined success. And me? I went to community college, taught myself data analytics from online courses and library books, moved to Albany at 22 with a second-hand laptop and a studio apartment the size of a parking space. Every time I came home for a holiday, my mother would introduce Brielle first to whatever aunt or cousin had stopped by. Then she'd gesture toward me like an afterthought. "And this is Gina. She's figuring things out." I was always figuring things out. Never arriving, never arrived. Here's something that sticks with me. On the wall in my parents' living room, there were 11 framed photographs. I counted them once during Thanksgiving the year before. Don't ask me why, maybe because I had nothing else to do while everyone fussed over Brielle's new highlights. 9 of the 11 were of her. Graduation, wedding, vacation in Santorini. 2 were group family photos. Not a single one was just me. I stopped counting after that. The Christmas before everything changed, my mother gave Brielle a silver pendant necklace, custom engraved with her initials, the chain delicate, the box velvet. Brielle held it up to the light, and my mother beamed like she'd handed over a piece of herself. Then she turned to me and pushed a flat gift bag across the table. Inside was a sweater. Purple. I don't wear purple. I've never worn purple. My favorite color is navy blue. I've told her this more times than I can count. Birthday wish lists, back-to-school shopping, the time she asked what color to paint the guest room. "Navy blue, Mom. Every time." "Mom," I said carefully, "you know I don't wear purple." She waved her hand. "Oh, I must have been thinking of someone else." Brielle laughed from the other end of the couch. Maybe she was thinking of someone who actually tells people what they want. I didn't argue. I pulled the sweater over my head and wore it the rest of the evening. No one noticed. No one said it looked nice. No one said anything at all. But here's what I kept turning over in my mind long after the dishes were done. My mother remembered Brielle's exact necklace size. She'd measured her daughter's neck to get the pendant length right. She knew the clasp Brielle preferred, the font for the engraving, the jeweler's return policy. She didn't know my favorite color. That night, driving home through frozen rain on I-90, I gripped the wheel and thought a sentence I'd never let myself finish before. One day, I'll stop pretending this doesn't hurt. But the purple sweater wasn't the worst thing my mother ever gave me. That came the following Christmas, and it wasn't a gift at all. It was a word. The following April, I drove home on a Saturday to help my mother clean out the garage. She'd mentioned it on the phone, just mentioned it, didn't ask. And I showed up anyway, because that's what I did. Show up. Don't be asked. Don't be thanked. She sent me to grab the mail on my way in, Most of it was junk, coupon flyers, a Bed Bath & Beyond catalog that should have stopped coming years ago. But at the bottom of the stack was a thick envelope from First Heritage Federal Credit Union, stamped in red ink along the top edge. Final notice. I didn't open it. It wasn't mine. But I saw enough. That night, I lay awake in my old bedroom, the one with the squeaky radiator and the ceiling stain shaped like Florida, and I heard them. My parents' voices, low and strained through the wall. My mother. "We can't keep hiding this, Tom." My father. "We'll figure it out. Don't you dare tell the girls." I said nothing the next morning. I smiled. I helped sort boxes in the garage. I ate the chicken salad my mother made without asking if I liked chicken salad. Then I drove back to Albany. But I didn't go home. I went to a coffee shop, sat in the corner booth, and opened my laptop. It took me 3 days to find the full picture. County records, payment history, a mortgage taken out in 2005, refinanced twice, last payment made 37 months ago, total remaining balance, $87,412. My parents were about to lose the house, and I stood in the kitchen that morning, holding the final notice in my hands, wondering, if I told Brielle, would she help? I called her on a Tuesday evening. I chose my words carefully, the way you handle something fragile you already suspect is broken. "Hey, Brielle, have you talked to Mom and Dad about the house recently?" There was a pause. 1 second, maybe 2. But it was the kind of silence that answers the question before the mouth does. "What about the house?" She knew. I could hear it in the slight shift of her breath, the way her voice tightened like a string pulled taut. "Brielle, I saw the bank letters." She sighed. Not the sigh of someone learning bad news, the sigh of someone tired of a secret she'd been carrying at arm's length. "Yeah," she said. "Mom told me about 6 months ago. But what am I supposed to do, Gina? Derek and I just bought our place. We can't take on their debt, too." I pressed carefully. "Did you at least talk to them about their options? A financial advisor? Refinancing?" "Gina, that's not my problem. They're adults. And honestly, if they'd managed money better, this wouldn't have happened." I held the phone away from my ear for a moment. I looked at the ceiling of my apartment, a studio, 600 square feet, rent I paid on time every single month. Brielle, whose down payment came from our parents, whose wedding was funded by our father working overtime for 9 straight months, whose college tuition my mother clipped coupons to help cover. That Brielle just told me our parents should face the consequences of their own choices. I didn't argue. I said goodbye. I hung up. And then I sat at my kitchen table and made a decision that nobody asked me to make. I opened a spreadsheet. I always think better in rows and columns. 6 years of working, 6 years of packing lunches instead of buying them, of keeping the same car, of saying no to vacations and yes to overtime. My savings account sat at just over $52,000. My year-end bonus, which my manager had already hinted would be strong, was projected around $18,000. If I cut everything, every subscription, every dinner out, every small luxury I'd quietly built into my life, I could save another $17,000 to $20,000 over 6 months. Total, roughly $89,000, enough to cover the balance, barely. It would leave me almost empty, years of discipline, reduced to a number just north of 0. I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I called the bank. I explained I wanted to make payments on my parents' account as a third party. The representative put me on hold twice, transferred me once, and eventually confirmed, yes, they'd accept it, provided the full balance was settled before the foreclosure filing moved forward. I started sending money the following week. Steady amounts, month by month, never missing a date. I told no one. Not my parents, not Brielle, not my friends. I didn't post about it. I didn't write about it. I just did it. The only person who knew was my boss, Margaret Calloway. I had to explain why I needed my bonus released early. She read through my request, looked at me over her glasses, and said something I've carried with me since. Gina, the fact that you're doing this says everything about who you are. Don't let anyone make you feel small. Margaret approved the advance that afternoon, and for the next 6 months, I lived like I was 22 again. Except this time, I knew exactly what I was building toward. Christmas morning. Light snow drifting down over the thruway. The kind that doesn't stick but makes everything look softer than it is. I drove with the box on the passenger seat, buckled in like a passenger. Silver wrapping, red ribbon, small enough to hold in one hand. The house was already full when I pulled into the driveway. Aunt Ruth's Subaru, Uncle Mike's truck, Kevin's sedan with the Penn State bumper sticker, and Brielle's sleek black Audi, parked closest to the front door, like it always was. I grabbed the box, walked up the steps, knocked once, then let myself in. The living room hit me in a wave. Cinnamon candles, the hiss of something frying in the kitchen, Bing Crosby playing from the old Bluetooth speaker my father refused to replace. Coats piled on the banister, shoes crowded by the door. Brielle was on the sofa, legs tucked under her, telling a story about a ski trip in Vermont. Derek stood by the mantel, swirling red wine in a glass like he was auditioning for a catalog shoot. Kevin and Stacy sat on the floor near the tree, scrolling their phones. Uncle Mike was in the armchair by the window, half asleep. My mother came around the corner from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a towel. "Oh, you made it. I was starting to think you forgot about us." "Merry Christmas, Mom." She glanced at the box in my hand, then at the tree. "You can put that under the tree. We'll open presents after brunch." Nobody asked how my drive was. Nobody asked about my week or my work or my life. The conversations continued around me, like water around a stone. But Aunt Ruth caught my eye from the dining room doorway. She smiled. "Gina, sweetheart, come sit by me. How's the city?" I sat, and I waited. Brunch was my mother's territory, a performance as much as a meal. Glazed ham, scalloped potatoes, fruit salad with the little marshmallows she'd been adding since 1998. We squeezed around the dining table, elbows touching, passing dishes over each other's heads. Halfway through, my mother stood. She clinked her fork against her juice glass. "I just want to say a few words," she said, smiling wide. "I want to toast Brielle and Derek. This year, Brielle was promoted to senior vice president at her firm, and Derek made partner at his. We are so, so proud." Applause. Uncle Mike clapped hard. Stacy raised her glass. Derek did a modest nod, the kind of nod men do when they want you to know they're being humble. Kevin turned to me. "What about you, Gina? What's new?" I opened my mouth. My mother got there first. "Oh, Gina's still at that little computer job." She said it brightly, like she was helping me out. "You know Gina, she's a late bloomer." Brielle tilted her head. "Mom, be nice. Not everyone peaks at the same time." I felt 12 pairs of eyes graze over me, the way you'd glance at a stain on the carpet, briefly, without interest. "I'm doing fine, Kevin," I said. "Thanks for asking." Under the table, Aunt Ruth reached over and placed her hand on my knee. She didn't say anything. She didn't have to. My father sat at the head of the table, head down, thumb scrolling his phone. He hadn't said a word since we sat down. I chewed. I swallowed. I smiled. But here's what none of them knew. Brielle's firm was Derek's boutique practice, 12 people, including the receptionist. And my little computer job had just helped close a deal worth $4.2 million. I didn't correct anyone. Not yet. After brunch, I went to the kitchen for a glass of water. The faucet still dripped. Same drip it had for 3 years, the one my father kept saying he'd fix. I filled a glass and stood there for a moment, looking out the window at the snow-dusted backyard. Brielle appeared in the doorway, arms crossed, hip cocked against the frame. "Can I give you some advice?" I turned. "About what?" "About your gift." She lowered her voice, like she was doing me a kindness. "Whatever it is, just don't make it awkward, okay? Last year was that homemade coupon book. Mom didn't even open it." It wasn't a coupon book, I said quietly. It was an itinerary. I'd planned a weekend trip for them. She waved her hand. Whatever. Just keep expectations low, for your own sake. I took a sip of water. What did you get them? Brielle smiled, the kind of smile that knows it's winning. A weekend at the Adirondacks Spa. Already booked. Derek and I are covering the whole thing. I nodded. I didn't say anything about how Derek's firm had just had its weakest billing quarter. I didn't say anything about how a spa weekend cost less than a single month of the mortgage payments I'd been covering in silence. I just nodded. Thanks for the advice, Brielle. I turned back to the sink, rinsed the glass, set it on the rack. She lingered for a second, then said, I'm just looking out for you, Gina. Looking out for me. The same woman who'd known our parents were drowning and hadn't tossed them a rope. I dried my hands on the dish towel and walked back to the living room. The box sat under the tree where I'd left it, small, silver, waiting. The living room had that golden, staged look, tree lights twinkling, wrapping paper colors arranged like someone had planned the aesthetic, which of course my mother had. Brielle's gift was the centerpiece. A large box wrapped in gold paper with a crimson bow, sitting front and center beneath the tree like it had reserved a seat. The cousins had brought wine baskets and candle sets. Aunt Ruth had a small bag with tissue paper poking out the top. Uncle Mike contributed a tin of homemade fudge, same as every year. And then there was mine. A box the size of my palm, tucked in the corner behind the tree skirt, barely visible unless you were looking. Derek picked it up, turned it over. What's this, a ring box? He laughed. Stacy leaned in. Maybe Gina's finally got a boyfriend. It's for Mom and Dad, I said. My mother glanced at it. Her lips curled into something between a smile and a smirk. How sweet. Brielle clapped her hands once. Okay, let me go first. I want to see Mom's face. She handed the gold box to our mother. Diane peeled the paper back slowly. She always liked to savor it. And pulled out a framed photograph of Brielle and Derek in matching cable-knit sweaters, plus an envelope with the spa voucher inside. Oh, this is gorgeous, my mother said, pressing the frame to her chest. Tom, look at this. My father glanced up from his phone, smiled, looked back down. Everyone clapped. Brielle glowed. Then the room got quiet. My mother's eyes drifted to the small silver box still sitting on the table where I'd moved it. She reached for it. And that's when everything I'd held inside for 28 years met the surface. Now, before I tell you what my mother said next, I want to ask you something. If you were in my shoes, and you'd just spent every single dollar you had to save your parents' house, and nobody in that room knew, would you still hand them the gift? Or would you take it back and walk away? Drop a 1 for give it or a 2 for walk away in the comments. Okay, here's what happened. But I need to rewind, just slightly. Because before my mother reached for that box, something else happened. Something no one in the room noticed except me. Between the brunch toast and the gift exchange, while Brielle was holding court about her ski trip and Derek was refilling wine glasses, my phone buzzed in my back pocket. I stepped into the hallway, just past the coat closet, and answered. Gina, Merry Christmas. Margaret Calloway, my boss, calling from her kitchen in Saratoga Springs, where I could hear her daughter laughing in the background. Merry Christmas, Margaret. I just wanted you to know, the bank confirmed everything's cleared. Final payment processed December 19th. The deed transfer paperwork will be filed January 2nd. You did it, Gina. I closed my eyes, leaned against the wall, breathed. Thank you, Margaret, for everything. You okay? She asked. You sound tense. I'm with my family. A short pause, then gently. Ah. Well, remember something. You don't owe anyone an explanation for your kindness, but you also don't owe anyone your silence. I let that sit for a moment. Then I thanked her again, wished her a good holiday, and hung up. When I walked back into the living room, Brielle looked up from the sofa. Who was that? Work calling on Christmas? Just my boss. Brielle shook her head with that practiced pity. See? That's the problem with your setup. When your job calls you on Christmas, that's not a career. That's a chore. I didn't answer. I sat back down next to Aunt Ruth. She squeezed my arm once, lightly, and said nothing. In my pocket, my phone still held the call log. 3 minutes and 14 seconds. The most important phone call no one in that room would ever know about, until they did. While the cousins were arguing about football and Brielle was helping Diane arrange dessert plates, I slipped upstairs. My father's study was at the end of the hallway, a small room with wood-paneled walls, a metal desk, and a filing cabinet that hadn't been organized since the Clinton administration. It smelled like old newspapers and the peppermint candies he kept in a jar by the lamp. I knew this room. I'd stood in it 8 months earlier, hands trembling, reading 3 years of overdue mortgage statements by the gray light of a winter morning. I knew the drawer, second from the top, left side. I opened it. The old letters were still there, stuffed in without order, creased and recreased. But sitting on top of the pile, still sealed, was a new envelope. White, crisp, from First Heritage Federal Credit Union, stamped in clean black ink across the front, paid in full, mortgage account closed. My father hadn't opened it. I picked it up, turned it over in my hands. The postmark was dated 5 days ago. He must have carried it inside with the rest of the mail and dropped it here with the others. Too afraid, maybe, or too exhausted to read another piece of bad news from a bank he owed money he couldn't pay. Except he didn't owe them anything. Not anymore. I set the envelope back exactly where I'd found it. I closed the drawer. I stood there for a moment, alone in that quiet little room, and let myself feel the weight of what I'd done. Then I went back downstairs. The silver box was still on the table, untouched, overlooked. My father sat in the living room scrolling his phone, 6 feet away from the letter that held the best news he'd received all year. And my gift held the matching copy. Aunt Ruth found me on the front porch. I hadn't planned to go outside. I just needed air, the kind that bites your cheeks and makes you feel real. The snow had stopped, and the street was quiet, the way only Christmas morning streets can be. No traffic, no lawnmowers, just cold and stillness. Ruth stepped out behind me, pulling her cardigan tighter. She didn't say anything at first, just stood beside me, watching our breath cloud in the air. "How are you, really?" she asked. "I'm fine, Aunt Ruth." "Gina." She said my name the way she always did, like she meant it, like she wasn't saying it out of habit but out of something closer to attention. Ruth had been a nurse for 30 years before she retired. She could spot pain the way other people spot weather. "I see how they talk to you," she said quietly. "I've seen it for years, and I'm ashamed I haven't said more." I didn't answer right away. The cold felt good, clarifying. "Whatever's in that little box of yours," she continued, "I hope you give it for the right reasons. Not to prove anything, not to earn their love, just because it's who you are." I looked at her. "It is." She pulled me into a hug, the kind that's more shoulder than squeeze, firm, warm, brief. The kind that says what words can't quite reach. "Then no matter what they say when they open it," she whispered, "remember, you already won, sweetheart." We stood there another minute. Then she patted my arm and went back inside. I followed her in. The living room was rearranging itself around the tree, everyone settling into position for the gift exchange. My box sat on the table, small, silver, ready. And so was I. The gift exchange moved fast. Kevin got a new watch. Stacy got a gift card and pretended to be thrilled. Uncle Mike unwrapped a flannel shirt and held it up like he'd won the lottery. Aunt Ruth opened a scarf from Diane, cashmere, thoughtful, a rare effort, and thanked her quietly. One by one the gifts disappeared from under the tree. Ribbons curled on the floor, wrapping paper piled up in the recycling bag by the door. And then there was just one left. My mother picked up the silver box. She held it loosely, between 2 fingers, the way you'd hold something you didn't expect to be important. "All right," she said. "Let's see what Gina brought." Brielle didn't even look up from her phone. Just open mine instead, Mom. It's actually worth something. A few people laughed. Short, uncomfortable laughs, the kind that fill silence when no one knows what else to do. My mother shook the box lightly. It barely made a sound. Then she said it. It's light. She smiled. Not at me, but at the room. Let me guess. Another dollar store candle from the family disappointment. The room went still for a second, then a few more laughs. Derek smirked behind his wine glass. Stacy grimaced but didn't speak. Kevin looked down at his shoes. My father sat in the armchair, phone in hand, eyes on the screen. He said nothing, did nothing. 12 people in that room. Not one of them said, "That's not okay." Not one of them said, "Don't call her that." Aunt Ruth opened her mouth. I saw her chest rise, saw the beginning of a word form on her lips. But I was already moving, because I was done waiting for someone else to stand up for me. I stood up from the couch. The room shifted, not physically, but in that subtle way a room changes when someone breaks the script. I was supposed to laugh it off. I was supposed to shrug, say something self-deprecating, let the moment pass like I always did. I didn't. My mother still held the box. She hadn't opened it. She was looking at me now, her smile fading into something uncertain. Brielle glanced up. "Mom, don't be mean. I'm sure it's thoughtful, in a Gina way." Derek leaned forward. "Is it a gift card? Those are always practical." My father, finally, spoke. "Just let her give whatever she wants to give. It's Christmas." But his voice was tired, thin, the voice of a man who'd stopped fighting years ago, about everything. My mother sighed. "I'm just saying, every year it's the same thing. Brielle brings something beautiful, and Gina brings—" She waved the box gently, like it was evidence. Well, I looked around the room. 12 people, my family, the people who were supposed to know me better than anyone in the world. And in that moment, they felt like strangers holding coffee mugs in a waiting room. Aunt Ruth started to speak again. I saw her lean forward, but I was already there. I stepped toward my mother and held out my hand. "Give it to me," I said. Her eyebrows rose. "What?" "The box. Give it back." "Gina, don't be dramatic." "I'm not being dramatic, Mom." My voice was steady. I was surprised by how steady it was. "You just called me the family disappointment in front of everyone I love. So no. That gift isn't for someone who says that about her own daughter." I took the box from her hands, and the room went completely silent. I held the box against my chest for a moment. My hands weren't shaking. That surprised me. I thought they would be. "This was supposed to be your gift," I said. Not loud, not angry, just clear. "But I'm going to open it myself, right here, and then you can decide whether you deserved it." "Gina, stop it." My mother's voice had shifted, less amused, more startled. "You're making a scene." "She's always like this," Brielle muttered to Derek. "See, this is exactly what I was talking about." My father set his phone down on the armrest. For the first time all morning, he looked at me. Actually looked. Not a glance, not a skim, but the full, undivided attention of a man who suddenly realized something in the room had changed. I pulled the red ribbon loose. It fell to the floor in a soft curl. I lifted the lid. Inside the box, a single brass key, polished and new, a white envelope, and a folded piece of paper. I set the box on the coffee table. I picked up the paper, unfolded it slowly. Then I held it up, high enough for everyone in the room to see. Aunt Ruth was the first. She read it from across the room. Her hand rose to her mouth. She made a sound, not a word, something between a gasp and a whisper, and pressed her fingers against her lips. Kevin leaned forward, squinting. Uncle Mike took off his reading glasses, then put them back on. Stacy lowered her phone. My mother stared at the paper but hadn't read it yet. Her eyes moved across the words slowly, like she was trying to assemble them into something that made sense. 10 seconds. That's all it took to change 28 years. But those 10 seconds hadn't finished yet. The paper was a single page, letterhead from First Heritage Federal Credit Union. The words were printed in clean black type, centered and unmistakable. Mortgage satisfaction letter. Account paid in full. Beneath that, the names Tom Walsh and Diane Walsh. And below the signature line, in a field marked Paying Party, Gina M. Walsh. The silence wasn't just quiet. It was heavy, the kind that presses against your eardrums and makes you aware of your own heartbeat. Kevin spoke first. Wait, is that what I think it is? Stacy set her phone face down on her lap, forgetting to stop the recording she'd started as a joke. Derek straightened in his chair, his jaw tightened. He looked at Brielle, then back at the paper, then at Brielle again. Brielle didn't move. She sat perfectly still, her lips slightly parted, her eyes fixed on the page in my hand, like it was written in a language she was only now learning to read. My mother's face went through something I'd never seen before. A slow collapse, layer by layer, like a mask dissolving in water. First the smirk, then the composure, then the certainty. And underneath all of it, recognition. She started to cry, not the gentle, dignified kind, the ugly kind, the kind that comes from a place you didn't know existed until it breaks open. My father stood up, slowly, the way a man stands when his legs aren't sure they'll hold him. He walked to me, 3 steps, maybe 4, and took the paper from my hand. His fingers trembled. "This is real?" he whispered. "Go upstairs, Dad," I said. "Check your desk drawer. The bank sent you a copy too. You just never opened it." He looked at me like he was seeing me for the first time. Maybe he was. My father went upstairs. No one spoke. We all just sat there, or stood there, listening to his footsteps creak across the old floorboards above us, the sound of the desk drawer opening, the faint tear of an envelope. 2 minutes, maybe less. It felt longer. When he came back down the stairs, his face was red and wet. He held the opened envelope in one hand and the matching letter in the other. His reading glasses were pushed up on his forehead, forgotten. "It's real," he said. His voice cracked on the second word. "The mortgage is paid off." My mother looked up from her hands. "What? How? We owe 87? She stopped. Her eyes found mine. "You?" she said. "You paid it?" I picked up the brass key from the box, held it out. "This is the new key," I said. "The locks were rekeyed as part of the title clearing process. The deed is free and clear, filed with the county January 2nd. This house is yours, Mom. No debt, no bank, yours." "All of it?" she whispered. "Every dollar." My mother made a sound I'd never heard her make. Something raw and unfinished, like a sentence that starts in the chest and never makes it to words. She pressed both hands over her face and sobbed. Not the polished TV movie version, the kind that shakes your shoulders and steals your breath. My father sank into the nearest chair, the letter against his chest, staring at the ceiling, blinking hard. Aunt Ruth was crying silently in her seat, hand over her heart. Uncle Mike had his arm around her. Kevin sat with his elbows on his knees, mouth open, shaking his head slowly. Nobody laughed, nobody clapped, nobody made a toast. They just sat there, holding the weight of something they hadn't seen coming, because they hadn't been looking. Brielle hadn't moved. She sat on the sofa with her hands in her lap, perfectly still, like someone waiting for a photograph that was never going to be taken. Kevin was the one who broke the silence. "Wait, Gina paid off the whole mortgage? On her own?" Aunt Ruth's voice came from across the room, clear and firm. "That's what she said." Brielle swallowed. I could see her throat move. I didn't know it was that serious." That sentence landed in the room like a dropped glass. I felt every head turn, not toward me, but toward her. "You did, Brielle," I said. I kept my voice level. "Mom told you 6 months ago." My mother's head snapped up, tears still streaking her face. You knew? Brielle's composure cracked, just a fracture, but visible. Mom, you told me not to worry about it. I told you we were struggling, my mother said. Her voice wasn't angry yet. It was something worse. It was bewildered. I asked if you and Derek could help with even one payment. Derek stared at the floor. His hand had left Brielle's. Aunt Ruth leaned forward. She spoke slowly, deliberately, the way she used to deliver test results to patients. Factual, unadorned, impossible to misunderstand. $87,000, she said. Your sister paid every cent, and she never once asked for credit. Brielle's mouth opened, then closed. She looked at me, and for the first time in my life, I watched my sister search for words and find none. The golden child, silent. The invisible daughter, holding a key. I didn't gloat. I didn't smile. I just stood there, holding the brass key in my open palm, and let the room sit with the truth. My father was the first to ask the question everyone was thinking. Gina. He leaned forward in his chair, the letter still pressed to his chest. How? Your job. I thought You thought I worked a little computer job. I said it without bitterness, just fact. He looked down. My mother wiped her face with the back of her hand, waiting. I'm a senior data analyst, I said, at a property technology company based in Albany. I've been there for 6 years. I started as an intern, and I worked my way up. This year, I helped close a deal worth $4.2 million. The room was so quiet I could hear the Christmas tree lights buzzing. My boss, the one who called me on Christmas, the one Brielle said was proof my job was a chore, she's the CEO. She called to wish me a Merry Christmas, because she respects me. Brielle looked away. My mother's voice came out thin, fragile. Why didn't you ever tell us? I let the question sit for a moment. It deserved a real answer. When, Mom? I said. Between the time you called my job a chore and the time you called me the family disappointment? When exactly was I supposed to bring it up? She had no answer. I didn't expect one. I softened my voice, not because I owed it, but because what I was about to say mattered more than anything I'd said so far. I didn't do this for credit, I said. I did it because this house is where I grew up. I learned to ride a bike in that driveway. I did homework at that kitchen table, and I didn't want you to lose it. I paused. But I need you to hear something. The whole room waited. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. The room was already mine. I love this family, I said. That's why I did what I did. But something has to change. My mother wiped her eyes. My father gripped the armrest. I am not the family disappointment. I never was. I just wasn't the daughter you wanted to show off. And that's your loss, not my failure. I looked at my mother. She flinched, but she held my gaze. From now on, if you want me at this table, at this house, at these holidays, I need to be here as an equal, not as a punchline, not as an afterthought, not as the one whose gift you laugh at before you even open it. Stacy had her hand over her mouth. Kevin was nodding, slowly, like he was hearing something he'd felt but never known how to say. I'm not asking you to thank me, I said. I'm asking you to see me. That was all I had. No monologue, no grand finale, just the truth, standing upright in the middle of a living room that smelled like cinnamon and regret. My father moved first. He stood, crossed the room in 3 unsteady steps, and put his arms around me. He didn't say a word. He just held on, tight, shaking, the kind of hug that has 28 years of silence packed into it. Aunt Ruth was crying openly now, pressing a napkin to her face. Uncle Mike had his hand on her back. Kevin cleared his throat, blinked hard, looked away. Stacy put her phone in her pocket, all the way in, screen down, like she was putting something away for good. And Brielle stood across the room, near the doorway, arms wrapped around herself, eyes red and glassy, watching the family rearrange itself around the daughter she'd never taken seriously. She didn't move. She didn't speak. For the first time in her life, Brielle Walsh Kessler was not the center of the room. My father sat down beside me on the couch. The room had thinned out. Kevin and Stacy had drifted to the kitchen, giving us space without being asked. Uncle Mike stood by the window with his arms folded, looking outside. Aunt Ruth stayed in her chair but said nothing. She'd done her part. My father held the bank letter on his knee, smoothing the creases with his thumb. I need to tell you something, Gina. Okay? I knew about the mortgage before your mom. I was the one who fell behind. He paused, swallowed. I lost half my hours 3 years ago. Business slowed down. Younger guys came in, lower rates, and my knees aren't what they used to be. I couldn't keep up. I said nothing. I just listened. I was too ashamed to tell anyone. Not your mother, not Ruth, nobody. I thought I could dig out on my own. I couldn't. He turned to me. His eyes were wet, and for the first time, I saw something in them that wasn't distance or distraction. It was shame, and underneath it, something worse. Admiration he hadn't known how to express. When I saw you, he said slowly, working hard, living alone, never complaining, I should have been proud. But instead, I felt ashamed. Because my 28-year-old daughter was handling life better than I was. His voice broke on the last word. So I looked away. I looked at my phone. Because that was easier than looking at you and seeing everything I wasn't. I reached over and took his hand. It was rough, calloused. The hand of a man who'd built things his whole life and felt like he had nothing to show for it. I'm sorry, Gina, he said. I am so sorry. It wasn't a perfect apology, but it was real. And real was enough to start. My mother approached the way you approach something you've broken and aren't sure you can fix. Slowly, cautiously, hands unsure of where to land. She sat on the edge of the coffee table across from me. Her face was blotched, mascara faintly smudged, and for the first time in my memory, she didn't seem to care how she looked. Gina, She pressed her lips together. I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything right now, Mom. But I do. Her voice thinned. I called you. In front of everyone. I said terrible things. Yes, I said. You did. I didn't mean... You did mean it, Mom. I kept my voice gentle, but clear. Maybe not to be cruel, but you meant every comparison. Every time you introduced Brielle first and me second. Every time you forgot my favorite color and remembered her necklace size. She opened her mouth, then closed it. I watched the realization settle over her, not all at once, but in layers, each one heavier than the last. I don't even know why Because it was easier to be proud of Brielle, I said. She gave you things you could show people, a degree from a good school, a wedding with a photographer, a son-in-law with a title. I gave you things you had to feel, and you chose the ones you could frame. My mother pressed her knuckles to her mouth. Fresh tears ran over her fingers. I reached out and placed my hand on her shoulder. I love you, Mom. But love isn't enough if it only goes one way. She looked at me, raw, stripped, without any of the armor she usually wore. I want to fix this, she whispered. Then fix it, I said. Not with words, with how you treat me from now on. The afternoon wound down the way Christmas afternoons do. Dishes clattering in the sink, leftovers being parceled into Tupperware, coats pulled from the banister. People said their goodbyes in low voices, quieter than usual, like the house itself was still processing what had happened. Brielle was at the front door when I stepped out onto the porch. She had her coat on, scarf half-tied, keys in her hand. Derek was already in the Audi, engine running, vapor curling from the exhaust. Brielle, she turned. Her eyes were red-rimmed, her posture stiff, the way people hold themselves when they're trying very hard not to feel something. I don't need a lecture, Gina. I'm not here to lecture you. I stepped closer. The porch light cast long shadows between us. I just want you to know. I don't resent you. She blinked. You should. Maybe. But I don't. She looked past me, toward the living room window, where the tree lights still flickered. I knew about the house, she said quietly. And I didn't help. I know. Why didn't you say anything in there? Why didn't you throw that in my face? Because that's not who I am. I paused. But Brielle, the fact that you expected me to says a lot about who you've become. She inhaled sharply, like I'd pressed on a bruise she didn't know she had. We stood there for a moment, the cold between us, the sound of Derek's engine idling in the driveway. We can be sisters again, I said. But it starts with you seeing me as your equal, not your supporting act. She nodded. Once. Tight. Then she turned, walked down the steps, and got into the car. I watched the Audi pull away, taillights disappearing into the gray. Then I went back inside, where the house was warm and the walls still held the echoes of everything that had finally been said. January 2nd came quietly, the way consequential days often do. I was at my desk in Albany when the email arrived, a confirmation from the county clerk's office that the deed had been officially recorded. Tom and Diane Walsh, sole owners, no liens, no encumbrances, filed and stamped. I forwarded the confirmation to my parents. My father replied within the hour, just 2 words, "Thank you." My mother replied an hour after that, with a longer message full of grammatical errors and too many exclamation marks, and the kind of earnestness that only comes from someone who's still learning how to say what they feel. I printed the email and put it in a folder. Then I opened my banking app. Balance, $2,340. I sat with that number for a while. 6 years of discipline, 6 years of packing lunches, and driving the same car and skipping trips, and saying no to things, reduced to a figure that wouldn't cover 2 months of rent. My phone buzzed. Margaret. Proud of you. Now go take care of yourself. I smiled, set the phone down, looked around my apartment. Small, quiet, mine. $2,340, and a conscience that was clear. I didn't feel rich. I didn't feel heroic. I felt light. The kind of lightness that comes not from having more, but from no longer carrying something that was never supposed to be a secret in the first place. I'd rebuild. I knew I could. I'd done it before, with less. The difference this time was that I wasn't building toward something to prove. I was building from something I'd chosen. My savings account said $2,340. My self-respect said something else entirely. 2 weeks later, I drove home. Not for a holiday, not because I was asked, just because it was Saturday and I wanted to see my parents. That alone was new. My mother opened the door before I knocked. She must have been watching from the window. She hugged me in the doorway, longer than usual, and said, "Come in, it's freezing." The house smelled like coffee and something baking. I hung my coat on the hook. There was a hook now, one that hadn't been there before, right next to the door, at my height, and walked into the living room. I stopped. 12 frames on the wall. No, 13. The new one hung between the group photo from Thanksgiving and Brielle's wedding portrait. It was me, standing in front of my office building, wearing a navy blazer, smiling in that slightly awkward way I smile when I'm not expecting a camera. My professional headshot from LinkedIn. My mother had found it, printed it, framed it, and hung it on the wall. I stared at it longer than I should have. "I put it up last week," she said from behind me. "I hope that's okay." "It's okay, Mom." She fidgeted with the dish towel in her hands. "I also ordered new placemats for the table, navy blue," I remembered. I turned to her. She looked uncertain, like a student turning in homework she wasn't sure would pass. But she was trying. That mattered. "Thank you," I said, and I meant it. My father came in from the back hallway, no phone in his hand. His sleeves were rolled up, his boots dusted with sawdust. "Hey, kiddo," he nodded toward the backyard. "Want to help me fix the porch railing? It's been leaning since October." "Sure, Dad." Small things, quiet things, but exactly the right direction. 3 weeks after Christmas, my phone buzzed on the nightstand at 11 on a Tuesday night. Brielle. I almost didn't open it. Not out of anger, out of habit. Brielle's texts usually came with a purpose that benefited Brielle, an opinion she wanted validated, a photo she wanted complimented, a problem she wanted me to absorb, but something made me swipe. "Hey, I've been thinking about what you said on the porch, about being equals. I don't think I've treated you that way, not for a long time, maybe not ever, and I'm sorry." I read it twice, then a third time. There was no follow-up, no caveat, no, "but you also," no pivot to her own feelings, just the words, sitting there on the screen, bare and undecorated. I set the phone down, went to the kitchen, made tea, drank half of it, came back. 1 hour later, I replied, "Thank you, that means something." 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. "Can we get coffee sometime? Just us. No Mom, no Derek, just us." I looked at the ceiling, thought about 28 years of purple sweaters and interrupted sentences and being introduced second. Thought about Brielle knowing our parents were drowning and choosing to look the other way. Thought about the word equals and what it might actually look like between two people who'd never practiced it. "I'd like that," I wrote. No exclamation point, no emoji, no rush. Because here's what I'd learned. Forgiveness isn't a moment. It's a direction. You don't arrive at it. You move toward it, one small decision at a time. And some days you take a step back, and that's okay too. Brielle and I would get that coffee. Whether it would fix everything, I didn't know. But the door was open, and neither of us had closed it. People hear a story like mine, and they say things like, "You're so strong." And I appreciate that. I do. But I want to be honest about what strength actually looked like for me, because it wasn't what you'd expect. Strength wasn't standing in that living room holding up a piece of paper. That was the easy part. By then, the hard work was already done. 6 months of payments, 6 years of savings, a lifetime of learning to value myself, even when the people closest to me didn't. Strength was the Tuesday night in September when I sat at my kitchen table with a bank transfer open on my screen, about to send $4,000 to an account my parents didn't know I had access to, and asking myself, am I doing this to be loved or because it's right? If the answer had been to be loved, I would have stopped, because that's a debt no amount of money can settle. But the answer was simpler. It was right, and I could do it. So I did. Strength wasn't winning the room that Christmas morning. Strength was knowing I'd have been fine if I'd walked out of it. I didn't stay because I needed them. I stayed because they finally showed me, clumsily, imperfectly, one awkward gesture at a time, that they were willing to try. If they hadn't, I was ready to leave. I'd already made peace with that. And that, more than the deed, more than the key, more than any reveal, was the real gift I gave myself. You don't need your family's permission to know your own worth. You don't need their applause to build a life. And you don't need their apology to set a boundary. But if they offer one, a real one, it's okay to stay and see what grows. The following December, I drove home again. Same route, same snow, same 2.5 hours on the throughway. But when I walked through the door, something was different, and it wasn't the house. My mother met me in the hallway. "Merry Christmas, sweetheart. I made your favorite, mushroom risotto." She remembered. The living room had 13 frames now, the same 13, dusted and polished. But there was a 14th. I almost missed it. Tucked beside the lamp on the side table, a picture of Brielle and me, sitting together in a coffee shop in downtown Albany, laughing about something I can't remember. Brielle had sent it to our mother without telling me. My father stood up when I came in. His phone was on the end table, face down. He crossed the room and pulled me into a hug. "How was the drive, kiddo?" Brielle arrived an hour later. She knocked. She always used to just walk in. And when I opened the door, she looked at me and said, "Hey, sis." No open mind first. No comparison. No performance. Derek followed behind her, nodded, and said, "Good to see you, Gina." And I could tell he meant it, the way someone means it when they've had time to reconsider what they took for granted. Aunt Ruth sat in her usual chair, watching it all with a quiet smile and a cup of coffee balanced on her knee. When we opened gifts, my mother reached for mine first. She peeled the paper carefully. Inside was a leather-bound journal I'd had custom stamped in gold lettering, Walsh Family Recipes. I'd spent 3 months collecting every recipe our grandmother had ever made, handwritten, from memory, from old church cookbooks, from Aunt Ruth's kitchen notes. My mother held it to her chest and closed her eyes. "This," she said, "is the best gift I've ever received." Nobody laughed. Nobody compared. It was just a family, imperfect, scarred, learning, sitting in a room that still belonged to them because somebody loved them enough to make sure it did. It wasn't perfect, but for the first time, it was real. If you're listening to this and you see yourself somewhere in my story, if you're the one your family overlooks, the one whose gifts get laughed at before they're opened, the one who gives and never hears a simple thank you, I want you to know something. You are not the family disappointment. You are the quiet backbone they haven't learned to appreciate yet. The one who shows up, the one who remembers, the one who does the math at midnight and figures out how to make it work. And one day, they may see it. They may stand in a living room with tears on their face and wonder how they missed it for so long. But even if they don't, even if they never open the envelope, never count the frames, never learn your favorite color, you will see it. You will know. And that is enough. Don't wait for their permission to value yourself. Don't wait for their apology to set your boundaries. You can love people deeply and still refuse to be their punchline. My name is Gina Walsh. I was 28 years old the Christmas morning. My mother called me the family disappointment in front of 12 relatives. I'm 30 now, telling you this story from the living room of my own apartment with $2,300 that turned into a fresh start. And a family that's still learning, still stumbling, but finally walking in the right direction. Thank you for listening. Thank you for staying until the end. So here's my last question for you. If you had that silver box in your hands, knowing everything it cost, knowing what they'd said, would you have given it? Or would you have kept it and walked away? Drop your answer in the comments. And if this story made you feel something real, hit subscribe. I share stories like this every week. There's another one in the description I think you'll love just as much. I'll see you there.